Every year, thousands of people in Japan walk out of the front door and never come back. Not kidnapped, not murdered, not dead. They just left on purpose, with no notes, no trail, and in most cases, no police investigations at all. The Japanese have a word for it. Johatsu literally means evaporation. Today we're going inside one of the strangest and most fascinating phenomena in modern Japan. The people who choose to disappear, the businesses built to help them do it, and the families left staring at an empty chair at the dinner table forever. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Let's start with the basics. Jōhatsu is the Japanese word for evaporation, and it is used to describe a very specific kind of disappearance. Someone who deliberately, voluntarily walks away from their entire life. Their job, their spouse, their kids, their name, they leave all of that behind and choose to start over as a ghost. This isn't a missing person's case in the way that you're picturing. There's no foul play, no accident, and the person isn't lost. They are hiding on purpose, forever if they can manage it. The term actually goes back to the 1960s, when it describes husbands and wives fleeing miserable marriages, and then it picks back up in the 1990s, after Japan's economic bubble burst, and salarymen buried in debt started vanishing rather than face their creditors or their families. Here's where it gets genuinely wild. Nobody knows exactly how many people this happens to every year, because Japan doesn't keep a public missing persons database the way that countries like the UK or the US do. Japan's National Police Agency reported around 84,000 missing persons filings in a single recent year, and the vast majority, something like 95%, are found within a week. Usually teenagers or elderly people with dementia. But that leaves a small stubborn percentage who are never found because they don't want to be found. Journalist Lena Mauger, who spent 5 years investigating this for her book The Vanish, put the real number of intentional disappearances closer to 100,000 a year, once you factor in the cases that never even get reported to the police in the first place. And that is the first twist in this story. In Japan, a huge number of these disappearances aren't even filed as missing persons. The families simply don't tell anyone, which brings us to the real question. Why would anyone do this? If someone vanished in most countries, the first assumption is that something terrible happened to them. In Japan, there is a quieter, darker possibility hiding underneath that. Shame. See, the Japanese culture places enormous weight on honor, conformity, and not burdening others with your failures. Quitting a job is considered humiliating. Going bankrupt is considered humiliating. Divorce, failing an exam, losing a promotion, all of it can feel to the person experiencing it like a permanent stain that the whole family has to wear. Veteran Japan-based journalist Jake Aldersley summed it up bluntly in an interview with Time. Faced with the choice of unaliving yourself, working yourself to death, or simply vanishing and starting over, vanishing starts looking like the sane option. Better missing than dead, as he put it. Take the story of a man named Norihiro, a real case documented by journalists covering this phenomenon. He lost his engineering job, and instead of telling his wife, he kept getting dressed in his suit every morning, left the house, and pretended to go to work for months, wandering, hiding, burning through savings, because admitting the truth felt unbearable. Eventually, he stopped coming home at all, and he is far from alone. Some of the most common triggers researchers and investigators point to is crushing debt, especially from loan sharks. After Japan's 1990s economic bubble collapsed and left a generation drowning in obligations that they couldn't pay. Job loss. In a culture that historically prized lifetime employment as the backbone of identity. Domestic violence and stalking. People, often women, who vanish specifically to escape someone dangerous. Failed relationships or divorce, which can carry a level of public shame that is hard for outsiders to fully grasp. And even something as small to us as failing a university entrance exam. It's a strange paradox. The act of disappearing is framed as an escape from shame, but it's also an act that guarantees permanent total separation from everyone who ever loved you. So, how do people actually pull this off? Here's where it sounds almost too strange to be real. There's an actual industry built around helping people evaporate. They are called yonigeya, which translates roughly to fly-by-night shops or night movers. These companies operate with surprisingly professional websites and pricing structures for a fee anywhere from roughly $300 to over $2,000, depending on how much stuff you own, how far you need to go, whether you're traveling at night to avoid being seen, and crucially, whether you're fleeing debt collectors. A night mover will quietly relocate you and your belongings to a new city, sometimes a new identity, and disappear you off the map. One of the most prominent companies, Yonigeya TSC, is run by a name named Saita, who is featured prominently in the 2024 documentary Johatsu Into Thin Air. For many of his clients, reaching out to a night mover isn't a casual decision. It is described in their own words as the alternative to unaliving yourself. That sentence is worth sitting with for a second. So, once someone evaporates, where do they actually go? Where do you hide in a country that's disconnected? This is genuinely one of the most fascinating logistical puzzles in the whole phenomenon, because Japan is one of the most surveilled, bureaucratically tracked societies on earth. So how do you vanish in a country like that? The answer is you head for the cracks in the system. There are specific neighborhoods like Sanya in Tokyo and Kamagasaki in Osaka, historically known as enclaves for the day laborers, where it's possible to live, work, and get paid in cash without ever showing an ID. These districts have long-standing ties to organized crime groups like the Yakuza, who can offer off-the-book works to people who cannot risk a paper trail. It's a brutal trade-off: the freedom of total anonymity in exchange for some of the most precarious, poorly paid, and dangerous work available, and very little protection if anything goes wrong. And here's where Japan's privacy laws come in. Almost like a built-in shield. Once an adult disappears and there's no evidence of a crime, police in Japan generally won't actively investigate. It is considered a private matter, and families are often left hiring private investigators out of pocket. And even then, PIs will tell you bluntly, without access to phone records or financial data, which Japanese privacy law restricts heavily, tracking down someone who's serious about disappearing is close to impossible. There's even a legal mechanism built around this. Under Japanese law, after 7 years of confirmed absence, a missing person can be legally declared dead in absentia. The marriage dissolves, the inheritance opens up. The system, in a way, has made peace with the idea that some people simply won't come back. But somewhere outside that legal paperwork, there are real people, and they are the ones who carry the heaviest weight in all of this. It's easy to get swept up in the cloak and dagger logistics in all of this. The secret moving companies, the cash-only neighborhoods, the legal loopholes, but underneath it, there is a quieter tragedy: the families. Psychologists have a term for what these families experience: ambiguous loss. It's grief without a body, mourning without a funeral. If you don't know if your husband, your son, your sister is alive in another city, working a cash job under a fake name, or if they died somewhere anonymous years ago, there's no closure, just an open question that never gets answered. And because the topic is so taboo in Japan, much like unaliving yourself, many families don't even tell their own extended relatives the truth. They'll say the person moved away for work. They'll quietly absorb the shame and the grief in silence, sometimes for decades. It's a haunting mirror image of the very thing that drove the person to vanish in the first place: shame on both sides of the disappearance, with nobody talking about either one. For decades, this was a story Japan mostly kept to itself. That started to shift with French journalist Lena Mauger and photographer Stephanie Ramel, who spent 5 years from 2008 to 2013, chasing down testimonies for their book, The Vanish. More recently, in 2024, German filmmaker Andres Hartmann and Japanese director Arata Mori released the documentary Johatsu Into Thin Air, following people at every stage of the process, before, during, and years after they vanished. And here is a haunting detail. The film's subjects agreed to participate only on the condition that the original version would never be shown in Japan. To respect that promise, an alternate version was created using deepfake technology to mask their identities, just so it could premiere on Japanese soil at the Osaka Asian Film Festival. Even telling this story, turns out, required its own kind of disappearing act. So, what do we actually do with a phenomenon like this? On the one hand is a wild piece of social trivia, a hidden industry, secret neighborhoods, legal loopholes most people have never heard of. But underneath the intrigue is something a lot more sobering. Johatsu is really a window into how much invisible pressure a society can put on a single human being. It raises a question worth sitting on long after this video ends. What does it say about a culture when disappearing without a trace feels safer and saner than simply admitting that you failed?